The thing that I enjoyed when I went into the high school, everything was so new. And I lived right across the street practically on Collins Street, so I had watched them build it, but when they opened it up, it was amazing.
Which elementary school did you attend and graduate?
Bears were outside.
Cove.
North Beverly. Hannah.
Like different teachers for different things was new. Everything was kind of up in the air. I wasn't really sure what to expect.
Really, really excited.
Oh boy, to the next grade.
New way to start over, school all over again.
It was nerve-wracking, you know, going from a nice small elementary school and knowing you're going to this bigger middle school, different teachers, you know, moving from class to class for every subject. That was a huge change and a huge deal.
I was actually hired the day before school started, and I had to kind of come in and start everything right away. But it was fun because it was such an old building, so I was really nervous to just be in it and figure out how to make it my own. It was huge. It was really, really old. Sixth grade reading, it was mostly, it was hard because I was put on a team that was already established and no other team had a reading teacher. It was just our team, so I was very scared.
My first time going into the building was probably 2 months before school began. But I remember going in July of 2004. I had never been in Beverly before. And I remember walking in through the front doors and just being so shocked at just the state of the building because it looked like a relic from a bygone era. And I remember being excited at the prospect of if I get this job, it's going to be really cool teaching in a building like this because it seemed so antiquated. It's not a word that a lot of people use to describe Briscoe, but charming. I remember feeling a mixture of typical first day nerves, excitement, a little fear of the unknown. I was 22, fresh out of college, had all these ideas and ambitions.
I remember my first day, my father dropped me off, and I remember the smell. It's a very distinct smell. The auditorium is right in front of you. The windows, it goes forever. I think that was the biggest thing, was how cool it felt when I walked in. Like the grand ballroom of the Titanic. That's kind of how I felt going into Briscoe. I loved walking up those stairs. All the layouts are the same.
It was circular because you could come in and do a lap around the floor and you could see everyone.
And I remember in the layout of the school, that it's 5 sides, it's like a pentagon shape, and how it's not very easy to get lost, so you shouldn't.
I actually loved the fact that all the faculty was very close because you would see each other no matter what.
I liked it a lot. I didn't like the school aspect, but I did love the building. I loved the significance of it.
We had 2 teams, blue and gold.
That was the school colors. It wasn't necessarily if you were on 6 blue, that didn't mean that you were going to go to 7 blue. You could be on any team. I was put on a team that was already established, and no other team had a reading teacher. It was just our team. And the reason was because of our numbers. So we had high numbers, we needed to add a 5th teacher. And so everyone else, I believe the other team kind of like taught their subject and reading, whereas our team taught their subject and then I taught reading. And so I had to work to figure out what parts of the English curriculum I was going to do. I was supposed to kind of teach them how to read, and she was going to do like the writing and such.
One year we needed an extra team in 1 grade, and we made the mistake of calling them Team Blue Gold. So of course they became the Bee Gees.
Your hub for school that you went to until the time came that you went to other classes.
As long as you're in your homeroom, by the time people came in all different doors. There was no order of bring everyone kind of through one central check-in or, no. You go in this door, go in whatever door was easy for you to come. You weren't driving. It's very orderly here. And security is a big, important thing. But we lived in a different world.
The loop on the 2nd floor. There was one thing that I remembered as the big social deal when I was there as a student, is that you walked on the 2nd floor.
Yep.
Before school started. Round and round and round.
With
and
your best
round.
friends.
And waiting for school to
for homeroom.
Oh, wow.
And that way you got to see everybody.
Oh, that's
so
interesting. Yeah.
When I was a counselor and I didn't have homeroom duties, I used to walk because I got to see all the kids.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference was I would go around one loop and then go the other direction because you got to see different kids that way. And I had a number of teachers who thought that was great, that I mingled with the kids that way.
The lockers lined the corridors.
They were tall, I'd say 2-3 feet tall, 1 foot wide, just metal boxes.
Lockers, they were teeny little lockers. They seemed huge, but I've seen them since then. They're teeny.
It wasn't really anything special. They were red to unlock it. You twist them around to clear it, twist it to your number. You go to your next number counterclockwise, go past it once and then hit it, and then just go straight to your number clockwise and then pull down and just take it off the hook.
I remember I fainted one time and crashed into the locker and went down on the floor. Next thing I remember was the nurse.
The lockers would store stuff with backpacks, books, as well as you could leave your phone, keys, anything else in the locker, and it would be safe. We had time to use them in between classes. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 5 minutes in the passing period.
Briscoe did not use bells. The middle school still doesn't use bells, so there was always this gonna make it on time, wanting to get there ahead of the students, having to prep ahead of time, but have to get to school early to do that.
Every teacher had their classroom differently, and sometimes if you got really unlucky, your classes would be like on different floors every single time. But generally, they were laid out, there's a table here, I guess there are certain students here, and then if you were assigned there, you normally get to make friends out of that group. And sometimes different teachers would like switch you around, which was kind of unfortunate in the fact that you wouldn't really get to talk to the other sections, but if you did reach out, you eventually did get to like make friends with those other people of different groups. But if you don't, you kind of had to wait till high school to do that.
And so I had to work to figure out what parts of the English curriculum I was going to do. I was supposed to kind of teach them how to read.
They made you read a lot of books. We read the Book of Job, which probably isn't offered today in school. We read a lot of classics.
From my observation of math teachers, they're pretty capable of teaching, in a closet if they need. Once they have pencil and paper, they can go for it. I don't think math teachers ran into a lot of trouble. The problem was if you wanted to do anything really creative, the rooms were small.
So I started teaching 7th grade science, which was life science at the time. We did all life science, everything from cells to human body systems and ecosystems. When they were learning about cells, we would look at human cheek cells. I would peel onions and take that little tissue layer from the onion, genetics as well, and heredity. So that was the students' first foray into understanding genes and how traits are passed down from humans to offspring. I remember I had a microscope that I had to use some weird cord to plug it into the back of a TV so that they could see on a TV. It was like a big VHS machine that you had to wheel and be like, this is what it looks like. One of the teachers or one of the grades did an underground railroad sort of simulation using the fallout shelter as a sort of pretending that was a place where people might go to hide. When I taught physical science, I taught physics like Newton's 3 laws, speed, acceleration. We did chemistry as well. And chemistry was really tricky to teach. The main part that I loved teaching, and I still get to teach it now, is the periodic table of the elements. A lot of students really don't know that much about it.
I taught 6th grade social studies for 4 years, and then moved up to 8th grade social studies, and I was 8th grade social studies teacher for 2 years there. The 6th grade curriculum was Ancient Civ. So we started with early humans, and then we went to Greece. Legitimately had a dedicated block a day for social studies, right? And being a huge history nerd, I just loved being the first person to really expose them to the world. I now teach civics and government at Beverly Middle School in 8th grade. So they've totally changed our curriculum. Yeah, that curriculum was so great. We just got to do so much fun stuff with it. Greek Olympics we did at the end of the year. We were outside, we made masks, we made Mrs. Joden run around the building.
You mentioned that you were on the train track side.
Yeah.
If a train ever went by,
Forget about it. There goes every single 11 and 12-year-old's attention literally right out the window. I mean, and like the horn goes off, oh my God, no way.
The last class of the day, right next to the railroad tracks. School was over at 2, but there was a train that came down from Montserrat, from Gloucester branch, and it always went by there about 10 minutes to 2. And I always tried to watch the train go by. But since I was the best French student in the class, she always saved the reading of the French book, or the novel, or whatever it was, for me. And she'd call on me when she knew the train was coming, and I'd have to get up and translate until 2 o'clock. I just read it right out like I was reading a regular book in English, right?
Taught French from 2005 until it closed. Across the hall was the German teacher. There was a scheduling problem with one of my first classes in the troop up to the classroom I'm supposed to teach in, and there's another class going on. So I start teaching in the hallway. Because the foreign language department sort of was techie, we were blessed with computers as like the beta testers for teacher laptops and projectors. And so we had a lot of advantages that some of the other teachers didn't have at Briscoe. The big issue, of course, was with those thick walls. The internet was spotty at best. Lunch duty, school was deafening. It got quieter as the kids got older. It was a whole grade at a time. So 6th grade lunch was super loud, 7th grade lunch was louder, and then 8th grade lunch the kids had figured out that you don't have to yell across the table. The nice thing about the lunchroom at Briscoe is that it was away from everything.
They had given us assigned seating, and I hated it. The table you sat at the first 2 or 3 days was the table you're stuck with, and they actually gave you like an assignment sheet, which I thought was ridiculous. I like new things. Sometimes you don't want to see the same people every day. The peanut-free tables, no one ever sat at them. And if you did sat at them, you probably didn't even have a peanut allergy. And they were very specific. They had a big sign on it, the peanut allergy table.
We would have food strikes. We don't like the tuna fish, so nobody bought lunch. And I remember the principal and the assistant principal coming to the cafeteria and saying, clearing tables, get up there and get your tuna fish sandwich. And they made us get sandwiches. But if we didn't, that was the time. If you didn't like what was happening, you would protest. Yeah. It was a different time.
The basement is full of history in Briscoe. You go to the gym, you go to the wood shop, you have to go to the basement. And that is a center of gravitational pull. Everyone kind of wants to go down there.
The center of the cellar, so to speak, was the gymnasium. And on the left side, when you walked in, was the boys' locker room. The other side was the girls' locker room. And if you walked across the hall, there was a wood shop. We converted the center area into another shop. It used to be just storage. And on the opposite side, it was the metal shop. That building was heated by steam heat. Well, downstairs, coming off the boiler room and back of the gym, were these huge steam pipes that carried the heat to the building up to the 3rd floor. When they had a steam leak, that big pipe ran right through my room, because back when that school was built, they didn't think asbestos was a problem. So all the pipes were wrapped in asbestos. They had to cordon off the room, have these guys come in and look like spacesuits and remove all the asbestos before the plumber could come in and fix the leak. We walked down to the boiler room. It was, at one point it was heated after they got rid of the oil heat. They switched to gas, but before they got rid of the oil heat, that building was heated with coal, old coal heat. You probably would never seen it again. When we moved into Briscoe from the old Briscoe downtown, it was running on oil heat at that time. But the boiler room had 4 big boilers down there, and I shouldn't say this because it's on camera. They used to burn trash from the cafeteria in there. Yeah, anything that would burn. The barrels from the cafeteria, when they emptied, went down to the boiler room.
One of the really fun field trips that one teacher did was actually in the basement, in the shelter. and they'd go down there and they'd all have something to sit on, and she would do a little lesson on the realities of why and how this building was built. And I went down a couple of times with her, and the kids were fascinated. Like, people would hide in here. It's a bomb shelter. And there was also at one time a range for the police.
My favorite elective course was woodshop. I loved being in that class, and it was cool because I loved the trade aspect of the classes they offered, because you're a 12-year-old kid and now you're playing with a bandsaw. I thought it was the coolest thing that could have been offered. I remember the big wooden tables they have with all the pencil marks and, you know, Austin was here, or what year you graduated or something. I felt like the electives were a very, very good way of introducing kids to something new. I don't know how many 12-year-olds get to use a bandsaw at home without their parents' supervision.
Shop, we called it shop. It was called industrial arts when I was a student there. Shop classes were just for boys. The girls took home ec. The kids were very enthusiastic. It gave them a break from being upstairs in their regular classroom. And then it became more of an engineering type thing as we moved along, technology-based stuff. So the old projects, as I said, were kind of on their way out. We built some small little race cars that we actually raced. We had some rocket building. We went outside and launched rockets. The first day, they'd never been in my room before. Take a little survey and ask them how many tools and machines and projects they might have made at home, and then come back with blank sheets of some of them. So I would say to them, boy, you never used a hammer or a screwdriver or a wrench? Nope. My father doesn't have any tools at home. I said, well, how do you get any things done? He hires people. When I was in the print shop, we did all kinds of things that dealt with printing. We did screen printing. We actually did some printing on shirts and stuff. Letterface printing, offset printing. Down in the wood shop, we were doing things on the lathes, bandsaw, the joiner, cutting out different shapes, forming something. And the metal shop was basically with sheet metal. The kids would form something like a candle holder. The metal shop also did some arc welding.
Nature's Classroom, 6th grade, there for 5 days, Monday through Friday. That was an experience, definitely different, because you're away from home with 200 other kids and some teachers. What are they going to do?
Near the end, 6th grade, Nature's Classroom was this thing where you'd get on a really cool bus, you'd sit with your friends, and you went to this weird camp.
I remember when we left for Nature's Class, we all went to the gym, which was in the basement. We all had our suitcases lined up. I remember that took a minute.
The bus ride felt like it was forever. We were so excited just to go.
I was excited because we had coach buses that had TVs in it. We played some games and stuff.
There were bunk rooms, and it was just lines of bunk beds. It was like a barracks with like 2 bathrooms. I didn't even want to shower. It felt dirty. Everything in that place felt dirty, but it was so welcome. I loved it. It was so much fun.
We were all cramped into these small cabins with a bunch of girls. And at the time, I was like so overwhelmed because it was all a bunch of chatty girls in one place, and it was so hard to sleep.
You were assigned groups in Nature's Classroom. So I can't entirely remember, but I'm pretty sure even if you were in a group, you interacted with other people that were outside of it. But when you got to Nature's Classroom, you would be assigned a counselor, and you would go with that counselor to walk around sometimes, but in other activities, you'd be with other people. It was cool.
We had to have like 15-minute showers, otherwise it would go cold. And all the girls wanted to go in the morning and the afternoon. And it was like a scramble to get all the showers.
Each day was different. I remember you go to the cafeteria in the morning, breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. We played like tag all the time. There's one day we went on something called the night hike, and it was fascinating, man. I really enjoyed that.
They did the Underground Railroad project, which was eye-opening. It was definitely different. It was a simulation of like as slaves at the Underground Railroad, and they took you on like a walk through the camp and simulated what it was like to be a slave. I remember the classes they offered, rope tying and sailing classes, but not actually sailing. You just learned how to do it, which I thought was ridiculous. We did skits and plays at night. Every morning was breakfast with everybody, lunch and dinner. They had the ORT report, O-R-T. You could still sing the song.
And I remember at night we'd have like a sing-along. There was this guy who had a guitar, and he'd sing songs every night.
We did this Thursday Night Live. It was like you made up these little skits and stuff, and I remember my group, we pretended that this guy kept getting like these inflictions from the people in our group. So first one would be like clapping and he'd start clapping, and the other one would be spinning and he'd start spinning. And then I come in with like a basketball, and it seems like I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a baby. He's like, ah, and he runs out.
I told my counselor a joke nickname that I had, and then they started calling me it, and it was an experience. It was funny looking back on it, but I never corrected them because I didn't know how.
I remember there's this one counselor who didn't talk. I don't know if he actually couldn't talk or if he just chose not to. I was in 6th grade, I didn't know. But I remember not a lot of people wanted to try to get to know him, and I did. And I remember on the bus when we were leaving for home, he like pointed at me and waved goodbye to me. And I just always remembered that was very special to me, that I could make a connection with this guy.
And we did this game called Predator versus Prey. I think it's kind of like a hide and seek kind of tag thing where there was bugs, frogs, snakes, and hawks. And if you got tagged by one of the higher groups, you were that part of that group. And eventually, of course, the hawks like won because they were the biggest.
I was thrilled to be back. I love nature's class, but I was happy to be home. And the pickup, it wasn't anything complicated. The parents came, I got off the bus, handed my mother my suitcase, and went to the car and headed for home. It wasn't like a super rigorous. It was well organized for such a large group of people that were doing it. It was fairly well executed and well planned.
In 6th grade, did you help with nature's classroom?
That's where I met my husband. Yeah, it was 2015. So I was on 6 Blue, and we always went alone to nature's classroom. And the gold team would go. And so we got the scoop, right, from the gold teachers. They would come back because the staff at nature's classroom, it changes from year to year, right? They're seasonal staff. So, sometimes they'd say, oh yeah, they're good, but make sure that this really good nature's classroom teacher gets the kids that might need a little more encouragement, because we found that teacher was super engaging. They would give us all these little tips, right? And so the gold team came back, giving us the deal, and they're like, oh, wait till you meet Medic Mike. Medic Mike is just the best. He is such a nice guy. He took care of everybody. He handled all of our problems. Medic Mike is the best. And we're like, all right, yeah, great. All right, great. The medic's gonna be good, because we're taking a lot of kids, so we need the help, right? So the morning that we leave for nature's classroom, we all gathered in the gym in Briscoe, and I was in charge of collecting all of the medication that was coming with us. So students weren't allowed to carry any medication unless it was like an inhaler, something that was really specific. So as the parents would drop off the kids, I would have a big sign and say, hey, give me your meds. And all the parents would come over, give me the, prescription information. I put it in a plastic bag, each kid in an individual plastic bag. I put it in a big tin. So then I carry that on the bus. It's literally on my lap because I don't want anyone else touching it because it's so important. And my first mission is to find Medic Mike and give him this plastic bin of meds. So I find him, and I'm like, here's the bin, nice to meet you, gives me a big smile. And I said in my mind, I'm like, oh, Medic Mike's kind of cute. Oh my God, what is he wearing on his head? And he has a Yankees hat on, and I'm a huge Red Sox fan. So the week goes on, right? And, we have some emergencies here and there. I have to text Medic Mike in the middle of the night. Medic Mike has to come check on one of our kids. So we're on a field trip, we're out in the woods, we spend a lot of time together. Just as, teachers, we get to know the nature's classroom teachers, and I have some of the students make fun of Medic Mike's hat. And I remember this kid, and I said, go up to Medic Mike and tell him how stupid his hat is. So I would, really egg him on. So, we'd said our goodbyes, we had our fun time getting to know each other. And then a couple weeks later, Medic Mike texted me out of the blue and said, hey, it was really nice getting to know you. Was wondering if you'd like to go to a Red Sox game with me. And my first reaction is like, but he had a Yankees hat on. Why? Because we talked a lot about sports. And I said, sounds like fun. And that's what I texted him back. And that was our first date. And now we've been married 5 years and we have a son. So we just kind of took off from there. And anytime I mention sounds like fun, whenever I say that, he like starts crying. That's my biggest memory in nature's classroom. And we had to chase a kid through the woods once, but that's another story for another time. So.
And it was actually when we got back to the middle school that we received our report cards. They gave them to us on the bus, and I remember looking through them. And I was looking, all right, science A, good. English A, as it should be. Math A, all right. Gym B. Wait a second, gym.
Reaching the end of 6th grade, like I said, I'd never really thought about what graduating actually meant. But it was kind of more just, oh boy, next year, here we go. I didn't think much of it.
Even in 6th grade, at the end of the year, we would do assemblies, like we did talent shows. I remember some girl singing Let It Go from Frozen, and she like absolutely blew the roof off the place. She was unbelievable. And like the musicals that we did, we could all fit there.
Well, I remember I had this really weird teacher would put on like a puppet show for one of her lessons. I just was looking forward to being with my friends.
The old Briscoe was downtown, right behind Ellis Square, and I spent my 7th and almost my whole 8th grade year there. And at the end of my 8th grade year, we moved into the old high school, which became Briscoe. We moved there probably around 1964 or 5.
I was in the group that carried our books from the old high school to the then new high school.
They told us to pick up anything that wasn't nailed to the floor at the old Briscoe and take it with us to the new Briscoe.
You emptied out your locker and just carried all of your books up the street to the new site. Well, we were all excited to come up to the new high school.
So I spent my 8th grade year and my whole 9th grade year at what used to be Beverly High School. Graded in grades 7, 8, and 9 because it was a junior high school back then. The 6th grade didn't move to Briscoe until 1981 when they started with the middle school concept. They moved the 9th grade to the high school, and the 6th grade moved up from the elementary school to the middle school.
So we arrived, we had already done our 6th grade. So our first year there was 7th. That class before us would have been really the first class to do all 3 there.
Majority of the teachers that I was active with at the old Briscoe moved to the high school. So it broke us up.
And it was really difficult for a lot of educators to make the transition because junior high educators are subject oriented and middle school educators are child oriented.
And the middle school concept was team teaching. That was new to all of us back then. We were just used to it being by department, math department, English department, and so on. Things that we used to do, we couldn't do, or we just didn't do them anymore. Not that we couldn't do them, but we didn't want to continue doing some of them because of the age levels that we had.
It didn't affect us because we knew we were going. So I think it was the normal transition anxiety a kid had going from the comforts of a grade school to a much bigger environment of a middle school.
And I was a 7th grade, 7 Blue math teacher. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I had so much fun with what I called the hormonally challenged kids. They just cracked me up because I just found so much creativity and curiousness in this age. They weren't being fresh. They weren't being rude. They were just trying to figure out who they were and how they fit into the world.
As for just like going up the years, it was kind of more of just I knew it was happening, but I didn't know what it meant because I never thought about the impact of it.
My teachers, of course, were different and the curriculum was different, but the atmosphere was pretty much the same.
School ended at 3. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I remember when everyone got out of school, that was the time to argue. That was the time to cause mischief. A lot of people in my middle school career would scuffle outside the bus, and then when they get in trouble, they run on the bus or whatever. They're still gonna get caught, right?
There used to be all sorts of arguments and all sorts of crap when I was on the way home.
We loved the bus ride. Oh, we loved Bruce. Bruce was our bus driver. And what he would do is, we grew a personal relationship with him. We were there for 3 years, so 6th grade, 8th grade. And he was our bus driver for 3 years. So he would bring us old pictures of his life, of his cars that he collected. So I honestly loved going on the bus ride home.
I know there were like 1,000 clubs at Briscoe, which was always really cool.
They certainly made an effort to provide a lot of activities for different kids.
I was in the Glee Club because I played the piano for the Glee Club.
But as for the ones that I was in, I actually, I was in newspaper club. My math teacher was someone who helped out with that along with the librarian. And she told me that they were looking for people to join, and I'm an artist, so I offered to do comics. So I was the comic person for the newspaper sometimes. There were multiple of us, but I was a consistent comic artist. And then I made my way up to being editor-in-chief, technically because me and my friend did it together.
I was in 4J, and I don't know if they have 4J anymore, but we actually put out the newspaper quarterly, I believe it was. And I wrote editorials for it, which was was like, really, you're only 17, you know anything at all? Yeah. So, but we all had very definite ideas.
There were articles on teachers, on current things going around the school, on just news outside of the school. The comics were kind of dependent on the artist, but I always just made really bad dad jokes and puns because I thought they were really funny, and I still think they are.
The newspaper. Wasn't there a newspaper?
Well, it was not a newspaper like in high school. I don't remember what it was called. It came out once a month or something like that. It didn't come out every week like the Ledger.
Wow.
In high school. But yeah, I was always really interested.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of how you really get socialized, in your life.
It was very inclusive. There was something for everybody. They had dodgeball. I think they had art and painting, and I was more on the sports side, so I didn't do much of that stuff. But I loved how they did offer it. You could stay after school with a teacher and, knit or something. That was always available. It was really cool how a lot of the people in Bristol were really, really involved.
They really tried to give people things to do.
I played football in 41, and I was quite proud of that because I never played football until I was a senior. I only went out 1 year, and I made the team, and I ended up being the outstanding player in the Beverly-Salem football game.
The big deal was the Salem-Beverly game, and that was always on Thanksgiving. And I never could go because I used to have to help put the food on because we had a big family. And so I'd have to listen to it on the radio. And a lot of times it was raining. So I wasn't unhappy I didn't go.
I spent 4 years being a cheerleader, and which I enjoyed very, very much. We did a lot of crazy things because at one time Beverly did not win too many games in those days, so we had to keep the people alive and well.
Orange and black go sailing right down to the end of the field. What we want now is a touchdown to make our opponents yield. From victory unto victory, we'll gladly something go. And I don't remember the rest of it, so I will leave it there. Certain cheers and certain things. Give him the axe, the axe, the axe. Give him the axe, the axe, the axe. Where? Right in the neck, the neck, the neck. Huh? The neck, the neck, the neck. Who? Then your opponent's name, and they all cheer and jump up and down.
During the war, we played a game called War. The whole object of the game, and I loved this, was to get the ball in the basket. Any way you want, just get the ball in the basket. And we had bloody noses and we sprained our ankles. But we played that game hard, and it was fun. It was a great game.
I was upstairs with my family. We were talking, and the news came over on that Sunday afternoon.
Sunday afternoon there, December the 7th, we had this old Atwater Kent radio there, and they announced that there was a bombing at Pearl Harbor.
Every Sunday, I would say 75% of the high school kids would go to the Ware Theater.
And one of the ushers came out through the curtains and announced that Pearl Harbor had just been attacked.
And when we came out, they were selling newspapers on the street. Extra, extra, read all about it. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And our thought was, where the heck is Pearl Harbor? I didn't even know.
Of course, we've been listening to the foreign programs. We've been hearing Hitler and Mussolini.
But nobody expected Pearl Harbor.
It was really quite a shock. I mean, I don't think any of us ever dreamed that anything like that could happen.
Well, I was like anyone else, amazed that the Japanese had the nerve to do this sort of thing to us.
It was really devastating, but I don't think for 1 minute that the people in the country thought that they were defeated in any way.
Once they lit the fuse, all hell broke loose, and we did gear up in all aspects to win the war.
The next morning, when we went into school, we had an assembly, and they had the radio plugged in.
Roosevelt made his famous speech about this day will go down in infamy.
And you know, you kind of looked around even then and thought, these boys are going off to this war. And you certainly didn't realize the impact of it. We didn't know what war was, but we knew it wasn't good.
Some of the seniors quit school and joined the service.
You got to be at least 18 years old, 17 with the parents' consent.
I put the papers in front of my father and asked him to sign them. He asked him what they were, and I forget what I gave him for an excuse at the time, but he signed them.
We had jobs to get, and we thought, hey, you know, they're going to need us to fight off the horrible Japanese and the horrible Germans.
Yeah, and the birthplace of the American Navy, I think, probably had some effect on them, too.
Gradually, you know, you'd notice that, well, so-and-so wasn't in your class anymore.
I volunteered to go. So 3 days later, I was all set. I was up there, got sworn in, and they took us down, put us on the train.
I graduated in June of '43, and I think my classmates are probably all gone at least by September 1st.
When the war first started and they issued those ration coupons, they used the public school teachers to distribute the coupons.
Well, the only thing I noticed was the rationing of gasoline and of meat. You couldn't buy them.
Football, basketball were all canceled. There was no way to get them to the neighboring schools to play. And then the boys began taking more phys ed.
They had physical fitness groups, and there was sort of a blanket organization called the Victory Corps. They helped on drives for war bonds.
I think they had a letter writing group. I
Right.
remember getting a couple of letters from students.
We have these air raid drills, and they get everybody to sit in the hall, and you had to sit on the floor and put your head down. They were afraid that we would be bombed.
I think that it put a great damper on a lot of the things that normally would have happened, senior proms and things like that. We had pretty abbreviated celebrations.
You couldn't even take a picture at graduation. You couldn't get film.
And of course, a lot of the seniors were long gone. Uncle Sam had waved his little finger and off they went. And the rest of us were just waiting for that little finger to be waved at us.
The night of graduation, they announced that we had lost our first war casualty, and he was a member of our class.
Growing up in Beverly, I had one good friend. And it got to be 1943, and he quit school, went in the service. And he's still over there.
I was right down here on Cabot Street, and we saw the newspaper that atomic bomb. What is that?
Yes. They were dancing in the streets.
You know, the next day we were still celebrating.
Shortly after that, we came home.
We pulled into San Diego, and then we ended up in San Francisco.
And then from San Francisco, they took the train back to Fort Devens. Within a couple of days, we were out.
And life got back to normal.
After I get out, and I was safe, I said, gee, that was a good experience in my life.
I hated it when I went through it, but now that I have been through it, I'm kind of proud of it and glad it happened.
In middle school, I was at Memorial, and Briscoe was the old building downtown, and we were sports rivals, team rivals. So when you say Briscoe, I say, wait a minute, that's a team rival.
There has been a long-standing sort of competition between Memorial and Briscoe. And, you know, I never really felt it other than I just sort of heard, you know, oh, Memorial's the better school, Memorial's newer, Memorial's got the richer kids, although I thought that was rather strange because Beverly Farms kids went to Briscoe, but what did I know?
Briscoe would have everyone from like downtown, Goat Hill section, the Cove area. And so I think Memorial would take all of Ryleside, North Beverly, people this side of Cabot Street. I don't know, I'm just guessing because I'm trying to think where my friends from North Beverly and Ryleside, I didn't really get to know them until high school.
It was neighborhoods. It was all like where you were from and just, I don't know, different parts of town. And
I can't, there was just dislike, a disdain.
I
can't, it just is innate in you. Like, you just,
it's like Red Sox Yankees.
It was very territorial. It's just done, I think, for pure, one building couldn't hold all the kids. So half the city went to one and the other half went to the other.
But there wasn't really any, you know, like serious competition. But it was one school versus another and, you know, which one was better, that kind of stuff.
I steadily taught 6th grade band, 7th grade band, and 8th grade band. And those were all separate classes that met roughly, the schedule changed a lot over the years, but on average the classes were about 45 minutes in length. But I'd see the band kids every other day. So, as an example, let's just say I had 8th grade band first block for 45 minutes. I'd see half of the band on Monday, and then I'd see the other half of the band on Tuesday. And then I'd see that first set on Wednesday, and I'd see the next set on Thursday, and it would just flip-flop. I didn't mind that schedule because the band room was so small. I mean, it was really not a band room.
Remember the band room, it was really old. The whole school's really old, but it was very old.
I had 2 6th grade classrooms directly above us. There was a French classroom on the other side of the stairwell, right outside my door. And then we also had the choral room right next door. So there would just be one wall, with a door, and you open the door and you walk through, and then you're in the chorus room. So they're singing, we're playing. 6th grade class upstairs is trying to do their lessons, and it's hard to control that volume from spreading. Any time there was something really serious going on in the academic classrooms, we get asked, can you not play today? Or can you play really quietly? Not always feasible.
Just would start with a warm-up, and then would get right into the music.
And then you play charts. And whether you're lucky or unfortunate enough, depends on how you look at it. You'd be called out by the band director sometimes for either doing something stupid, doing something great, or just playing your part correctly. You were presented with maybe different instruments sometimes, depending on, like, if you played clarinet, maybe he'd suggest, the band director would suggest if you played bass clarinet.
I'd go from snare drum one song to bass drum the next, to timpani the next. I remember a few songs. I had a song, I think it was 8th grade, called Firebird. I had like the timpani.
Band is engraved into my mind because I remember having a lot of core classes that I did, and then band was like the only fun thing I got to do in middle school, because it was like, instead of being stuck in a classroom all day and just rinse and repeat for years on end of just like, oh, do this, learn this, take a test. It was go into this new room, do a new thing by playing an instrument, learn a new skill, learn how to do something new every day that actually interests you, learn how to play a song with people, and like, it was more freeing. It felt like instead of just being judged in this weird academic way, you were actually like learning but having fun and getting a good grade for it. And sure, of course, you were still learning how to play something. Like, you were graded on how well you could do something, but it wasn't like having to do like a math problem that you didn't know how to do. It was like learning how to read something that you could always learn how to read no matter how much you were struggling with it.
There was no middle school jazz band when I started at Briscoe. The all-city group that we know today was actually housed here at the high school. And it was run by Mr. Novak, and he was part of my hiring committee. So when I got hired, he immediately nabbed me for two things. He wanted me to jump on board and help with the high school marching band, which I did. And then he wanted me to help out and co-run the all-city jazz band. So it had middle school students in it, but it was based at the high school. And so by my third year, he's like, well, you take the reins now. Why don't we keep All City Jazz Band at Briscoe? It's kind of your baby now. It's your project. And, I'll jump in and help as needed. So he kind of handed it off to me. And so I'd say by 2007, maybe, 2008, All City Jazz Band was housed at Briscoe. We'd still meet one day a week after school, much like it is now, and it included 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
I remember I auditioned in 7th grade and I wasn't good enough to make it, and it very much fired me up to want to prove my point and get in the next year. So my drum teacher said, if you want to play jazz, you need to listen to it. So I started listening to jazz to try to get the feel down. I still don't have the feel fully down. It's by far the hardest type of music to play.
We practice on Thursday afternoons. So I think of it as a middle school group now, but when I first got hired, it felt more like a middle school group that was run by a high school band director, and then that slowly changed.
We just go through our material. I think we have 5 or 6 songs. We did Jump, Jive, and Wail when I was in 8th grade, and I had a drum solo, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I look back at it now, I'm like, how was I that impressed with myself?
And I belonged to the chorus, which I loved.
And I didn't start chorus until I was in 7th grade.
Oh, I had 6th, 7th, and 8th because I had chorus class. I had a chorus class for each grade, and I had a drama class that I taught on the stage in the auditorium.
We actually were in the auditorium, and we were on risers. We didn't do it in the music room or anything. We just did it, on the risers with a conductor. And the fact that it was organized like that, we weren't just all sitting around singing. I think that was great too, because they had the sopranos and the altos and everybody in their little designated spots.
I went into the auditorium. I had the auditorium for the first, first year, 2 years, and then I moved into a classroom.
We did some wonderful stuff, honestly, complicated things.
2 weeks before a concert, this group hadn't met in full, right? They were used to meeting as a group of 30 as opposed to a group of 60 or 65. So I would have to schedule after-school band rehearsals and get everybody there from like 3:15 to 4:30 and pack 65 kids in a single room. We'd try to go to the stage, but the stage might be in use. And fitting 65 kids in that room for an after-school dress rehearsal, everyone was elbow to elbow.
Once we get closer to like December, then we merge both and use the auditorium.
There's a winter concert, there's a spring concert, and for concert band had the all-city concert. Jazz band didn't do that.
They would have Beverly-wide, citywide concerts at the high school, and that's when the elementary school band or bands might have played. I think they might have had a group band, I don't remember. And then the 2 middle schools would play, the choruses would all sing, and then the high school would end it.
And it was in the evening, and everybody's parents came. The place was packed with people, always. It was fun.
The concerts were just generally like, hey, your parents, look, your kids are playing something, but it's a good intro into how concerts work in the real world and stuff like that. And it was a good way to get awareness out of the school.
I dancing and all that with my friends, looking out, you could see that families were much more spread out because the seats were starting to break. It wasn't like people in one big group. They were just like, there's a good chunk here and a good chunk here.
To give anything to go back in the building. I could spend hours. I mean, even after they closed, I would still just go back in. I mean, and just like sit in the auditorium and just take it in. Because the auditorium's beautiful.
That auditorium is so beautiful.
It's a nice quiet place too if you wanted to just go sit up in the balcony and just kind of chill out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a good space, so.
Half the seats were gone, but it was a really nice auditorium.
And the balcony was like off limits because there's rumors it was just going to collapse. I mean, that thing was old, but it was beautiful.
And I used to tell the kids, you're never going to see this again. This is like Lincoln days, President Lincoln days. You'll never get to see a school because it's all going to be modernized, you know, and that's what I miss. I miss that auditorium. I just miss that space so much. It was beautiful. It was old. I mean, it's 1923, but you know.
I couldn't wait to be involved in that theater there because it's so beautiful.
8th grade, I was in the musical.
The music program was really super.
So I was really interested in it, so I started to audition. And as I moved through the 3 years at Briscoe, I became more and more involved. And then in 8th grade, we did the big musical production. Every year there was a musical.
I had a panel of teachers on there, and also myself. And they would come in, we did 2 days of auditions, and I told them what to be prepared for, went through the whole thing. And then I had callbacks, and then post that list, and they would come and just do the callbacks, and then that night, we'd be there till like 7 o'clock at night. But I had the last say for the cast. You know, they had put their input in, but I knew the kids so well. I kind of knew by the time callbacks came around who had what. You know what I mean? It just kind of, in the beginning you don't know, because people say, oh, do you always know your cast ahead of time? Some people do. You know, you have an idea. You can say, oh, well, maybe this person would be good or what have you, but it never stays the same.
And that was very unlike me. I was not a musical performer type, but my friends were. And they're like, yeah, come in. I'm like, I'm not I don't want to be on the stage. No, you can be like a supporting. So I was a nun in the choral section. Cool, all right. I get to hang out with my friends, sing, and, you know, not have to be in the spotlight. That sounds great for me.
They were right after school, 3 to 5 o'clock. And we started in January, and then we opened in May.
Every single day after school. And now, again, as an adult, I appreciate more those adults saying, you know, this is a commitment. You gotta show up. You know, they gave us, I think, only 3 excused missing rehearsals.
But we did talk about stage makeup and lighting and you know, things like blocking, which is, you know, where you stand on the stage when you are talking to someone, you know, basic things like don't put your back to the, you know, all that type of stuff that you learn. It was a lot of fun.
And the way that I did rehearsals was I rotated them. So they may go to choreography, you know, for 45 minutes, and then they went to musical with Mr. Littlefield rehearsal for 45 minutes. And then on Mondays, it was just my day by myself, and I did blocking. So I did all the blocking on stage. But every time they were in rehearsal, they would rotate. So they were getting 2 things that day. And 3, 4, so they're very strong.
Running a middle school pit orchestra, it presents all the challenges of a high school musical times 10. And most of these were junior shows, like watered down, simplified versions, but not all of them were. And I found that whether they were the junior versions or not, trying to get a middle school pit orchestra to play these books, super, super challenging. So unlike the high school where, you know, it's like 90 to 95% kids, and then we might have like 1 adult or 2 adults, right, filling in. What I ended up doing at Briscoe was I'd pull in parents. I'd pull in, because a lot of the band kids got into band because their parents played clarinet or trumpet or drums back when they were in middle or high school. So it started off with like, I would have 4 or 5 parents sitting in and covering some of these parts, and then it became a thing.
There's no way I could have ever done this without these parents in this community. They did everything for me. I had parents who, they had regular jobs, but they were artists, and they came and they painted all the backdrops. I had fathers who came in and built me things. Like, for Anything Goes, I wanted a boat. I wanted a ship, like a half a ship on the stage. It would stick out, but sturdy enough for the kids to tap dance on. So these parents were coming in and doing this for me, even on weekends. I had parents who did all the costumes. I had parents who did the program. We did a program like a regular theater, where we went to a professional company, but the parents owned it, so they kind of gave us a break. But we put the kids' pictures in there. They had messages. It was colored photos. You know, it was fabulous.
I was stage crew. You just had to wear all black and just, I don't know, move stuff around, I guess. Be quiet, be quick, don't drop anything. Yep.
Then we had a whole week of tech week. So we'd be in there from 3 to 7 for the first 3 nights, and then we opened Thursday night. And that was running lights, costumes, the whole sound, and I always had a pit, which I always had players.
So it had all the challenges that high school pit orchestra does, but I think the biggest difference was at the middle school, it was this very collaborative, family-oriented thing where you would have a 7th grade trombone player sitting right next to their dad, who was like a tenor sax player back in the 80s, and they're both playing the book from Guys and Dolls together. And it was pretty cool.
We'd use the cafeteria, because the cafeteria was behind the stage. Like, there was a cut through that you could get right to the stage from the cafeteria. That would be where, like, we would be doing our hair, our makeup, horsing around and whatnot.
The school had this makeup kit, and it was the same makeup kit every year, and it seemed to get updated, and everybody just kind of dug into the makeup kit whenever there was a play and put it on each other.
We always had a packed house, always for 3 days. We had 3 shows: Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday matinee.
So without further ado, Guys and Dolls.
My kids were fully prepared because I started in January. I had auditions, and then boom, we were in it. And 3 or 4 times a week, they're fully prepared.
Showtime, it was nervous. I've never done this before. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And of course, peeking out and going, oh my gosh, I had to walk down and do this and do. You thought first day of 6th grade was nerve-wracking? Forget it. Do a performance for a middle school play with your friends sitting, here and your family over here. Oh my goodness.
And when I find you, she will comfort me through endless days and lonely nights. I can feel she's got someone I've been searching for.
One more chance to take, one more star to reach, one more wish to make. My love I beseech, one more chance to say, I'll be yours this day. One more chance to love, silently I pray.
Any student that appeared in a play, they would write their name on the wall. I know when I went to middle school there, I was on the crew for Sound of Music. So I'm sure my initials are somewhere on that wall.
I had them write their names. So anytime they did a show, they were allowed to write their names. Was it just the 8th graders? I can't remember. I think it was just the 8th graders.
Lots of signatures on that wall. It was fun. Like, you think you hear that and you're like, oh my God, every single day after school for like 2 hours rehearsing and rehearsing and rehearsing. And sometimes, like, for me, a good chunk of that, I'm just sitting in a chair in the auditorium watching everybody else rehearse, like the big, scenes and whatnot. But again, one friend might be rehearsing while another one has a break so we can talk over here. Like, it was fun. You get to socialize, you got to hang out with other kids that you wouldn't normally hang out with. It was long, but in the end, it really was. It was so much fun. It was really fun, and it was a good experience.
I remember going into Briscoe as the principal. It was like coming home for me. We had a great time. We had a great year. I felt like we were opening up all the windows and shaking the dust off and really starting to move forward as a really quality middle school. And then the floor fell out, and we were told that we were going to have to combine Memorial and Briscoe into one school.
The summer of 2005 was when it became clear that Memorial was shutting down, and they were going to move everyone in that building over to join us.
We were told that it may happen, and then all of a sudden it came out of nowhere, it's happening. So we had to scramble, pack up, we could only take so much stuff, and they came over and got the stuff.
And I was initially excited about it because Memorial had their own middle school band program, their own director. Then at kind of the last minute towards the end of that summer, she ended up moving. So we brought in a brand new band director who was only 1 year younger than me. So here I was as the veteran, a second-year teacher trying to show the ropes to a first-year teacher. All the while, we have two programs that are coming together. Half of the kids just lost their director, and we're trying to make it as smooth and efficient as possible.
Well, I won't take you through all of the stress and agony to the point where Memorial actually moved over. But I will tell you that it was probably one of the hardest years of my life.
They literally moved one school into another school. There was stuff still around that hadn't been unpacked.
A reading teacher I used to work with was nearly in tears because they had moved her classroom stuff from Memorial and just dumped the boxes in the middle of her room.
You know, it was hard, I think, for many of those teachers to actually leave that physical building to come over. And it wouldn't have mattered if it was Briscoe or any other building because there was that really strong attachment to that brick and mortar.
There was a lot of resentment among the Memorial teachers for a while. Some of them were fine. I mean, I know a math teacher who just said, look, this is what we've been given. We're going to make it work. Others really never got over that.
A big part of the challenge, I think, was trying to establish like a positive working culture with the Memorial staff. So in the same way that the kids, you know, at that time were like, I'm a Briscoe kid or I'm a Memorial kid. And there was initially kind of this wall.
Because it was a huge adjustment coming from one school to another with no time in between to even go over and get set up and what have you.
The Memorial teachers had a really tough time because some of those people had the same classroom for 20 years. And then to have that yanked in a not very thoughtful way, I think that had a big impact on people's morale.
And I get it. Their building closed. They lost their turf. They had to come into a new building. So it wasn't like we all went to a third building and started from scratch. Like they came into our building.
And I felt bad. I mean, I thought, you know what, I feel their pain.
The Briscoe teachers tried really hard to be welcoming, but there was so much resentment, and it was really resenting the process and the administration.
You talk about being crowded. There was no room to breathe.
Even in its heyday, Briscoe could always hold more than Memorial could have.
We had over 1,000 kids there, so they were using spare rooms. They were using whatever they could find to put in a classroom.
When I started there, we had 2 teams, but then when we merged, the 2 teams weren't enough. So we had 3 teams per grade, blue, gold, and white.
We made some adjustments to accommodate, but our class sizes went through the roof. And we tried to do the best for the kids with the number of workstations we had. Like my shop had maybe 20, 25 workstations. When you have 34 kids, what do you do with the other 9 kids? It's not like in a classroom you can put another chair in.
It was a tough situation for everybody. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the big picture and say, you know what? This is not why we're here. We're here for the kids. You know, we're here to do our job.
We made the best of it.
But the thing about it was that the kids were fine. The kids blended in, and they were what I've always known and always loved about middle school. They were just typical, hormonally challenged kids, and they blended together. It was the adults that had the hardest time.
We did a lot of activities for bonding. We would have breakfast parties, if you will, before school started. We had book club. We have a lot of things that we tried to do with each other to help along. And then you just mixed up with different teams, you know, and pretty soon it just became the middle school.
Do you remember sort of what you were feeling going into your last year?
Going into it?
Was there sort of sense of...
Well, yeah, now it's nice to be a senior, because we are now the ones that those people down there that are juniors look up to, becoming seniors, as we did. It's nice to be seniors. And we were interested in what are we going to do now? Where are we going to go? What's going to happen?
We were the lead. We were the deals. We were the upper crust. No, you just, it was wonderful. Yeah, this is it. We're on the home stretch. Yeah. Yeah, we It felt, was. Get the hell out of here. It was really fun. We It was felt going to be superior. sad. Yeah.
And it was a lot of emotions. We loved getting our yearbooks and everything.
And have you signed, everybody signed
really.
them.
That was definitely a time when we were thinking more about who our teachers were and what their expectations would be and what the rumors were about them and, you know, whose homeroom were you going to be in.
Well, we definitely, as with any grade change like that, wanted to be the kings of the school, you know, in charge of the school, feel so comfortable in the school. We loved our teachers. We had great teachers. Yes. So I think we were psyched about that. And, but also kind of like not wanting it to end because like, we love middle school. Like, I feel bad. Like, so many people, like, didn't like middle school. And we're like, we had so much fun. Like,
going into it, it was generally the same thing of like, oh, look, a new year. And then graduation happened, and I found myself standing in the high school auditorium. And I was like, wow, I'm actually graduating middle school. There's more to life than just being trapped in the constant cycle of school.
And it goes back to me being scared of change because I had a hard time as a student. But it was the home stretch.
It was a very exciting time. We had a bunch to look forward to. So I'd say it was for me, it was a very positive thing. I was very excited for it.
Going into my 8th grade year, I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of reaching my limit, I think. I was eager to reach high school, I think. I'd been through 2 years of middle school. I was thinking, all right, you know, 6th grade, 7th grade, those were long years, and I'm just ready to get out.
No more school. I mean, you could always count on Well, next year we're in a different room in the same old building and so forth. But now you got, we got no place to go at the moment. I mean, you're planning on college or whatever it is you're going in the Army most of the time then.
What condition would you say Briscoe was in by your 8th grade year about?
Very poor. Up until when I was in 6th and 7th grade, they had this giant gash in the auditorium. I don't know if it was water damage or there was this giant piece of the ceiling that was just gone. And they didn't fix it until I was in 8th grade, and it wasn't even them. It was the church who rented the place out that fixed it for them.
I remember that in class you were talking, and I felt something light fall on my head, like someone just touched my head or whatever. And I looked up, and like there was a piece of the ceiling that broke off, and then I brushed my head, and there was a bunch of white chips coming off of my hair, and I was like, what is this? So I looked up, then again I saw that the piece of the ceiling fell on my head, and I didn't feel anything, but my hair was just covered in white paint, and nobody even noticed.
And then, I remember when I was in 8th grade, there was literally a piece of the ceiling above me that fell off. As I was walking out, literally a piece of the ceiling down in the front hallway had fallen right above me.
It was always hot in Briscoe. Didn't have AC, so summertime doing classes, your fingers are sweating, picking up your papers. It was bad. It was hot in there. Mass gets humid, so inside gets humid as well. And a lot of teachers had their classes out in the hallways just to try and cool the kids down, have them drink water. So you wouldn't think that'd be a thing in school, but it definitely was. It was hot. It was always hot in the summertime in that building. Very, very hot.
So you also then had the great pleasure of being there on a hot, humid day and touching the sticky wooden railings. Remember the day
I do.
Robin and I were going up, and it was so muggy, and the railings were so sticky, and Robin touched it, and she said, you know, I bet my father's sweat is on this.
It was so funny though, when we were designing the new building, I was like obviously the representative for the art department and had to go and sit on all the meetings with the developers on like, all right, what do you want in the new classrooms? What do you want in the building? Like that type of stuff. And they had to preface every meeting for like everyone with like, okay, take off your list right now, windows that open, heat that comes on, like literally those basic needs, because everyone had, that was the top things on their list, because we were like so like just deprived of those basic, that's like the level we were at.
And at the same time though, as the days went by, I started to realize, okay, this building has some pretty stark deficiencies with, as many people have commented on, and I will too, the heating system or lack thereof, the cooling system or lack thereof. One of my immediate memories that comes to mind from that first month was my classroom, which was on the 3rd floor, directly above the library, had no electrical outlets in it. And when I say no electrical outlets, I don't mean like they were just shut off or broken. The room had no power outlets in it.
The boilers would fail. I remember when I was in the downstairs room walking in one day and picking up one of my pens to write on the expo marker, and it was frozen. The expo marker, and it was frozen, and I went to the assistant principal. I said, George, I have a problem here, because my room was so cold it had frozen my markers.
So in the month of June it would get so hot, and the teachers were more apt to open the top window with that hole as opposed to down here, because kids are kids.
We didn't want them jumping out or throwing books out.
And I remember I had this algebra teacher, Mrs. Alphin, great teacher, never smiled, but she was a very good teacher. And a pigeon flew in the room. And she belly laughed for like 10 minutes, right? And all of us were
everybody
like,
enjoyed
because
that.
we were afraid, like
Yeah.
we can't laugh because she was strict. But we ended up the whole class, it was just awesome because she was laughing, she was happy, then we're laughing, and the lesson kind of went to the wayside. She's like, just work on your homework, this is too funny. But we'd never seen her smile the entire school year. It was just awesome. That is fun.
What do you actually remember about MCAS itself? How it was run and how the day would typically go, everything like that?
I remember MCAS, it took a lot longer than it does now. Now students usually are done within 2, maybe 2.5 hours. It definitely was it felt like a longer test, and I don't know if that's simply because it was on paper. And when I say it was on paper, there was a booklet that had the questions, and then there was their answer sheet that had bubbles. It was like multiple choice, and you would write your answers there. So it was, just that, having to put track and like, oh, 1 is D and blah, blah, blah. Like the bubble sheet aspect, I remember collecting, like we had so many materials we had to hand out and collect. So all of that took a really long time.
I was the MCAS coordinator. I was supposed to be the principal. The principal didn't really like doing it.
Right.
But he did come one evening to help me pack the boxes. And everything had very explicit instructions, and you had to check things off that you did them, and somebody had to sign off, and it all had to be proofed. We get to the part where it says place the books in the boxes so that the barcode is in the lower right corner. And he looks at me, excuse me if I won't quote, but this is ridiculous. What if the guy who opens the box has it this way? And he walked out. But that's how ludicrous some of this stuff was. The directions were absolutely crazy.
Well, because the paper test would be like missing pages or would be printed upside down, and it had to be under lock and key. And boxes and boxes and boxes of these paper tests would arrive in the principal's office, and it was all like high security, and you had to make sure that you signed out what paper you were taking. You had to count all the booklets, make sure that it was all ready to go, and then as a proctor you have to say exactly what's on the script. Now honestly the script hasn't changed much other than now it's online.
One year I had picked Jonathan Livingston Seagull, so for October, November, December, and January, off and on, we would go to that story, we'd look for, whatever.
Yeah, right.
So I'm proctoring that particular grade for MCAS, and all of a sudden I notice nobody's writing, and nobody's doing anything, and I look up and they're staring at me, and I said, "What is it?" And they went, "I think we have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" And the kid turned his book around, and guess what the story was?
Oh no.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I said, oh my God. I go, listen, number one, nobody's cheating. This is just a book in my library. I happened to choose it. You guys are fine. But they're like, Miss Gillette, is this cheating? I went, no. Nobody has any idea what the stories are when you get them. It's like, you just get to work. Let's just call it a day, just get to work, you're familiar, just do the best you can. I went into my office and I was laughing. I'm going, who could ever have done that?
I know.
With all the literature in the world, right?
I know. That's amazing.
It was very funny. Yeah, they couldn't wait. We all couldn't wait for MCAS to be over, because then we'd give the kids a little bit of a break with, more. Middle school is great for that, so you can do more fun activities that have to do with curriculum after MCAS. You can kind of save the fun and good stuff for that, because the kids need to decompress and settle in again. So yeah, it was always fun when it was over.
And they had the elevator, if you remember that as well. They had an elevator in there, which I thought was so cool. I remember walking by it, and like, this thing is old. It had the gate that you close, and if somebody was like in a stretcher, they ain't getting in there. This elevator is as big as this table. I thought it was the coolest thing. I always wanted to go in it, but I never did. It had the big gate, and it was old. It looked cool. It felt like I was in like an asylum. It felt like it.
You had to count everything, and so I would get there bright and early, and I would get in the elevator, and deliver them to whatever classrooms were using them that day. And I got into the elevator and I pushed the button and the elevator went. So I opened the door for the telephone and there were 2 wires.
Oh, no.
And I thought, oh, I must have to know Morse code or something.
And this is pre-cell phone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we didn't have cell phones.
No, I
so-
didn't have a cell phone with me. No. So I pressed the alarm button, and this very kind teacher said, "Oh, is it stuck again?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I am claustrophobic." So I was breaking out in a sweat, and so how was your weekend? I said, "Could you just get me some help?" I said, "Oh, they'll be along shortly. They must have heard the bell downstairs." Now, I'm between the 2nd and 3rd floors. There were only 3 floors. Nothing's happening. Sweating. And I'm looking at the MCAS test, and I just get this vision of the principal opening up the lid on the top and saying, "We'll get to you later, just pass the test."
Are there any other particular memories or stories about Briscoe that come to mind? How it evolved over time and gained more, I guess, modernized over time?
Yeah, we were limited in what you could do because that building was built like a fort. You couldn't change much of anything. So what was there was there. I mean, they tried to upgrade some of the stuff, but they were limited on what they could do as far as that goes. You know, anytime you wanted to try to fix something up, or you had to go through the proper channels, and then you got involved with some of the asbestos problems that they had, and that most of that caused nothing to get done.
When technology came around,
That was the death knell in a lot of ways for Briscoe, because the building was built in 1923, the WPA and all of that. And we would joke that it was going to take a nuclear device to tear that building down because it was so solid. So they couldn't get into the walls to run wires for technology. All of the wiring was run around outside.
Ceiling.
So it was really tough to wire that building for technology, and then signals couldn't get through and so forth.
I mean, I got a grant one year to get these little laptops that would they would pick up Google writing, Google Docs, and within 2 years they were obsolete. I had a cart, I had 30 of them, Neos, they were Neos. And the kids loved them, but then all of a sudden Chromebooks came out, right? And it's just like, all of a sudden I was told, yeah, you don't want to use these anymore because we're doing the Chromebook switch over, and you're thinking, wow, that was a big grant I got for those. So we still use them for little things. Or if kids wanted to learn how to type keyboard skills, that was a really good thing to use them for. But in terms of Google Docs, we had the Chromebooks.
The other annual thing was that they used to do a trip to Washington, D.C., and then it got changed to Mount Washington in New Hampshire. And that was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and always had great parent volunteers to help chaperone, and they were great. You know, the kids loved it. We'd go on the boat, we'd go on the train ride, there was all kinds of activities. It was fun. I think we only did it that one year. Did we? Was it the following year we changed it to Mount Washington?
You only did that one year.
Yeah.
And
then we went to Mount Washington. And in Mount Washington they had, there's a boat trip on Winnipesaukee, and that was a whole fun thing. And
they climbed Mount Washington.
That's right. Yeah. And I can't remember what else.
Did the
turkey
ski
farm.
lift across the street from Mount Washington.
Right. Yeah.
We stopped at the Luna Center for.
The New Hampshire person.
Yes. Yeah.
Kristen McCall.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. We stopped there, and we went to some kind of wildlife sanctuary. I remember feeling like I was way too close to a bear. Like there was mesh, metal, and no plexiglass, and there was a bear. It's like,
So, actually, my first year in 6th grade, I was roped into chaperoning the New York trip for the 8th graders, who I knew none of, right? So, I'm on this bus with 100 8th graders. I knew none of them. I was a terrified, first year teacher. And, we had to take them around the Bronx Zoo, which was enclosed, right? So, you can't really lose a kid. But then we took him to Times Square, and I was so scared because it was like, this is an open area in the public, unregulated. But I had a group of boys, and I said, all right, boys, so what do you want to do? We just want to go to Lids. I said, great, let's go to Lids. So we were in Lids for an hour, and I was like, all right, enclosed space, right? We lost a bus that trip. We had a bus go to Pennsylvania instead of New Jersey, where we were staying. So they had a medieval times dinner that we would go to, like a dinner theater.
And 8th grade, the New York trip, the most disappointing thing of my life. That's probably why they got rid of it so fast. I remember going to the bus at 5 in the morning to go to New York, and you're there for a day or two, and with that you have a bag or two packed, and you get to this hotel in New Jersey, and they just kind of keep you there because it was night. I can't even remember. They brought you to Times Square. You were there for 2 hours, and I had $40 in my pocket. My dad gave me, and didn't need to buy anything. What the hell am I gonna buy? I bought 2 polo shirts from the polo store, and they brought you to the medieval night. You ever heard of that? Oh my God, Medieval Nights. It's where they do it's like WWE. It's scripted, and they have these fights with knights and horses and their armor, and it was really, really cool. And you eat with your fingers. They bring you chicken legs. They throw it on you. That's actually really cool. That was a lot of fun. But overall, for me, the New York trip was a big disappointment. I just wanted to go home. I didn't even like it. The guys I was rooming with, I kind of just got thrown in with because I didn't really have anyone to room with me. I didn't want to go, so they just threw me somewhere. And that's how it is.
My grandparents scrounged up enough money for me to go, and I was super stoked. I couldn't really buy much, but we went to a Broadway show. We saw Mary Poppins, and that was common for all the 8th graders who went to New York. And it was a pretty fun experience. I got to room with my besties, so it wasn't like it was like Nature's Classroom where they're all packed in one. It was a nice hotel. We had a nice complimentary breakfast, and that was really the first time I ever gone out on my own, kind of.
I don't remember the name of the place, but we got lunch at this barbecue place, this Texas barbecue place. We got lunch at a Texas barbecue place. It wasn't the Empire State Building, but we got to go to the top of the Rock, the 30 Rock building.
So then we transitioned to Boston for 8th grade, and that's gone through some different iterations now. There was one year we went to Fenway for a tour, and I think the kids really liked that. A lot of them had, been to Fenway for a game, but to actually hear about the history, again, history nerd, was really cool for them. We spent some time on the Common. We saw Blue Man Group a couple times, which was super cool. And now we're not going to go to Boston this year. We're just going to go to Six Flags. And I say just go to Six Flags. It's going to be awesome, right? Enclosed space, run around with all your friends. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I remember the 8th grade trip to Boston. We went on a tour of Fenway Park, and our tour guide just insisted on letting us know how expensive everything is at Fenway Park. I think that we ate at some restaurant. We saw the Blue Man Group. And that was really cool. And I chose to sit in the section where I wouldn't get things splatted on me. The people in the front, they had ponchos on. I remember after it was over, they come up to us with their eyes this wide open. They're like, what just happened to us?
Went to the senior prom together, and then we got in his car, he was driving, and we went to Boston or someplace, and had dinner and dance and all that crap, so forth and so on. And that was a good time, because that was our senior prom. Yes, we did go.
We did not get into the Briscoe at Gloucester Crossing until mid-October because they weren't quite ready for us. However, ours was the first class to graduate from the new Briscoe at Gloucester Crossing.
And that would have been in the year of 1926.
That's right.
First graduating
Yes,
class.
the first class to graduate.
Right.
Not the first full year, but the first class to graduate.
And then how did it feel being the last class to graduate?
Crazy. I think I was part of the end of an era. It was open for 95 years. If my great-grandmother grew up in Beverly, she would have gone to Briscoe. So to think that I was part of a history for so long, part of the closing chapter, is pretty surreal still. It's a big part of this town.
We read in the papers where more and more of the older buildings in town now are either being retired or put out to pasture, as it were. The Hardy School is gone, and many of them have been turned into condominiums, etc. What are your feelings about the future in terms of building needs here in Beverly?
Well, I think that we have a big job in front of us to go through the entire school building population and try to get things sorted out. We've been working a lot on the elementary school facilities, and that certainly is the place to start. But I would like to think that our look will include the middle schools and the high school before we're through. The difficulty is, of course, Ted, that it's a lot of money by the time you get to the end of that. We could very well be talking as much as $45 million to have all of our schools in the right shape for the next 15 or 20 years.
Well, I figured it was going to happen at some point. It wasn't
Right.
going to live
It was an old
forever.
building, right?
Like I said previously, I felt like it would stand forever. One of the things that I've felt all along is if it had been properly maintained through those lean budget years, some things could have been prevented, but there was just no getting around all that technology stuff. It's like a fortress in there, you know.
When I heard Briscoe was being closed, I was happy that no one else had to go to Briscoe because it was falling apart. There was stuff everywhere. It was just like breaking. It was not the cleanest school. It wasn't the sturdiest, safest school. But as I got further along the year, I thought kids will never experience Briscoe, and that's something that everyone in Beverly had to go through at one point or another.
We were so excited. All we really asked for was more space, access to current technology, and windows that worked. Hot and cold running water. We were at a real basic minimum. And when we got into the new school and we all had sinks in our rooms and hot and cold running water and these big screen TVs, Apple TVs that we could just use as projectors and everything else we needed. And for the first year, I think it took everybody a while to just figure out how that all worked.
I actually loved the fact that it was circular because you could come in and do a lap around the third floor or the second floor or down in the basement, and you could see everyone. So all the faculty was very close because you would see each other no matter what. That's very different now because we have wings versus the circular part, so we don't really see each other as much and we don't know each other as much. We were very much a family at Briscoe.
Going into the new middle school, it was a lot cleaner, newer. It looked like a school of the future, like something the Jetsons would go to. And it just seemed brighter, newer. Like everything seemed better there.
One of its biggest flaws would be that Briscoe had itself in a circle and the new middle school doesn't, so you can get lost in that place far easier. However, the new middle school is very versatile. It has like different rooms too, but in like a way that it's like new and exciting and 1,000 different like things to see.
Well, the new middle school schedule has been different every year. A lot of that had to do with COVID. It also has to do with juggling a lot of moving parts that we didn't necessarily, 4 grades, sharing what they call global apps teachers now, so that's your art, music, and health, and those kinds of classes. Those are, because those teachers share, they have all the kids, it makes the schedule a nightmare.
Well, I think Beverly's always been a very strong community. And the school is a very significant piece of it. But this building that you have now is just, to me, is just amazing. It's just ginormous.
I can just feel how happy that made me. It just felt like home. Briscoe felt like home. It was a great school as a student, and it was just as warm and welcoming as a teacher. And I had a really, really good perspective on what I felt were the kids at that age.
So we feel that we had a good life all through school years.
Well, I believe the design of the school is, for its era, is very good. I mean, it's solid. It stood up all those years. And it has, it's reached its term, but yet it hasn't.
And how grand it looked and how it made me feel that this was an important educational start for me as far as high school is concerned.
I hope that they keep as much of the historical character of that building as they can when they're renovating it, especially that gorgeous auditorium and the entryway there when you first come in the building with those wide staircases. It's just so stunning and so breathtaking and so iconic for those of us who grew up here.
Briscoe did a very good job with what it had. As bad as the building was, they made it feel secure. You were safe in that school. You were around people that were protecting you. You were around teachers who cared, and they did a very, very good job. Beverly's academics program is wonderful, I'd say.
Yeah, well, the time's gone by, so. But it would mean it was a good high school to go to.
We just enjoyed. We learned, but enjoyed everything at the same time.
We did what we were supposed to do, but we had fun doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But they were good years, forged a lot of friendships that we still have today, and we talk about the good old days, and it was a good time.
Well, a lot of folks have gone to Beverly High School over the years, and we all have our memories of the building, and it would be just wonderful to see it looking at its very best again one more time.
you.